Thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll give it just a minute for more registrants to join, and then we'll start the session. Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's training session. My name is Tejaswini Kulkarni, and I'm a project associate with the climate team at WRI India. Today, we are pleased to conduct the fourth MSME training session on resource efficient and cleaner production. This training series is being organized and conducted in partnership with the Confederation of Indian Industry. They have extensively engaged with the Indian industrial sector, especially MSMEs, by not just providing solutions to address their competitive needs, but also helping the sector develop flexible strategies to cater to changing regulations. Some housekeeping rules before we start the session. All attendees will keep themselves in listen-only mode. Please use the question section on the right to send in your comments and questions. You can also direct your questions to specific speakers, and the organizers will redirect them. If there are any issues with the audio or the video, please message one of the organizers in the chat box. Today's presentation will be recorded and will be later shared with all registered participants along with the slides and a summary document containing all the questions during the session. So if your questions aren't answered during the session due to lack of time, we'll definitely answer them in this section, in this document. The objectives of the training session: the COVID-19 pandemic has caused unprecedented disruptions in the economic activities globally and in India, disrupting domestic production, network, trade, and services. It has brought to light the highly inequitable side of economic disasters, and among the worst hit were the MSME sector. Despite the MSME sector being a large part of the Indian economy and employing around 50% of India's workforce, climate change would only intensify these already prevailing inequities in the system. The main objective of these training series is one, to build awareness among MSMEs on the impacts of climate change on business, economy, and livelihoods, and to provide them with a range of skill sets that would help them address the challenges linked to climate action, thus making them more resilient to future climate impacts and better prepared for future direct regulations on MSMEs, such as emissions reduction, energy and resource efficiency goals, etc. The series also aims to equip MSMEs with the knowledge to leverage existing regulations, markets, and opportunities, both globally and domestically, championing sustainability and efficient operations within the organization. For these sessions, we have invited not just subject experts who cover the theoretical aspects, but also industry experts from both OEMs and MSMEs that share their experience of undertaking specific approaches and how it has benefited them. The topics covered in this training series range from climate change basics and the first steps to addressing it, that is accounting and reporting of your emissions, to more technical areas of resource efficient and cleaner production. And finally, concluding the series with one key challenge faced by MSMEs, that is information about enabling policies and available finance that would help them adopt greener and more efficient technologies and processes. Thanks to the MacArthur Foundation, this training series is free and open to all. These sessions are conducted online, and the recordings and related session material are uploaded on the WRI website. The links to the previous three sessions are hyperlinked in the previous slide for your easy access. A certificate of participation is given to every attendee with an attendance of more than 70% of the total session's duration. In the current economy, that is severely impacting 63.4 million MSMEs, enhancing resource efficiency becomes all the more relevant. Before we start our session today, we will launch a quick poll to get the audience's perspective on how RECP approaches can benefit the MSME sector. Warren, can you launch the poll, please?
Yes, so I think you should see the poll on your screen now. So before we begin sort of the session on RECP, resource efficient cleaner production, we want to understand from the audience that what in your opinion could be the biggest benefit of RECP based on what you understand of it to your organization. I'll give you 30 seconds to answer, after which I'll close the poll. Okay, another 10 seconds.
Varun, can you just read out the results, please? I'm not unable to see them on my screen.
Right. Okay, so basically we have a mix of results. So we have 50% of the audience who says reducing environmental impact would be the biggest benefit, 30% saying reducing costs and increasing productivity, 10% readiness to meet future regulations, and also another 10% saying meeting green procurement criteria of OEM customers. So basically we have a mix of all the responses, and yeah, I'll just.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Well, in fact, MSMEs can benefit from adopting RECP methods on multiple spheres. The first is the readiness to meet future regulations. The government of India in recent years have been undertaking steps to reduce the emission footprint of its GDP growth and have increasingly implemented regulations to do so. The RECP measures with RECP measures in place, MSMEs would be able to navigate through any such future direct regulations on the sector, while also gaining access to supporting green finance and schemes for RECP. The second is meet procurement requirements of OEMs. Recent trends have shown that companies, while taking steps to reduce their own Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, have become increasingly concerned about reducing the Scope 3 emissions. MSMEs that have taken up RECP measures would invariably have a competitive edge over those who haven't. The third is a business case for RECPs. RECP measures are able to optimize the use of current resources by reducing the waste produced for the same output. The benefits also cascade into reduced costs of production and related economic impacts. Dr. Bharat Jain from GCPC would take the participants through the concepts of RECP while also discussing the various approaches that would aid MSMEs to move towards more resilient and efficient pathways. The CII has been working with the MSME sector in India as a part of the World Bank project to implement RECP in the sector in South Asia. Based on their experience, Mr. Atik Sheikh will elaborate on the opportunities and challenges that the MSMEs face and the supporting policies and schemes for RECPs in the sector. Resource efficient and cleaner production, or RECP, consists of two components. The first being the resource efficient component that looks to optimize the use of the MSME's current resources, leading to lesser waste generation for the same product output. And the second component is the cleaner production, which looks to employ cleaner or greener technology to produce the same output while reducing or managing any environmental impacts that accompany conventional technology. The second part of the webinar will focus on operationalizing the RECP approaches, where our MSME expert, Mr. Khadir Arunachalam, the owner of Syndicate Impex, would be focusing on the resource efficient component. He will share his experience on identifying and implementing resource efficient interventions and highlight the associated costs and benefits and environmental impacts of these interventions. And my colleague, Mr. Ashok Kanikonda from the WRI India, would focus on the cleaner production component with a focus on renewable energy, making a case for renewable energy and its relevance to the MSME sector. He will emphasize on the challenges, opportunities, and the current technology options and models that the sector could benefit from. My colleague Shubhangi Gupta will be moderating the session, and Varun Agarwal will be managing the question and answer section. Thank you. Over to you, Shubhangi.
Thank you, Tejaswini. So, like Tejaswini mentioned, the first section of this webinar is introducing RECP for the MSME sector. In order to do so, we have Dr. Bharat Jain, Member Secretary of Gujarat Cleaner Production Center. Dr. Jain is a highly experienced professional of more than 40 years in environment management. In the past, he has worked with the Public Health Engineering Department of the governments of Rajasthan and Gujarat, designing and executing a number of water supply and drainage schemes in Rajasthan and Gujarat. He has vast experience in the planning of an industrial estate with necessary infrastructure, including STPs and CEDPs, and is also involved in carrying out environmental impact assessment studies. A former chief engineer of GIDC, at present, he is working as member secretary of Gujarat Cleaner Production Center that is involved in the promotion of resource efficiency and cleaner production of industries, and is also working on retrofitting of industrial estates into eco-industrial parks. We'd like to extend our sincere gratitude to you, Mr. Jain, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to present RECP as a concept to our audience today. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Good afternoon and thank you. Namaskar. If someone can share my presentation.
Yes, Dr. Jain, you have control over the screen right now.
Should I share or?
Are you able to control, or I can navigate it? Either way.
I think you can share and then I can have control. Is it full screen?
Yes, it's full screen. Yeah, you have all the control right now.
Okay, at the outset, I'm thankful to WRI for giving me an opportunity to share our experience of RECP, particularly in the MSME sector, to discuss about what exactly as a Gujarat Cleaner Production Center we are working. So the contents of presentation, just I will discuss about the concept, what we have adopted from UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, the background of it, how we started, and there are benefits as already was discussed, some of the benefits in the initial question, what practices and methodology we have adopted with certain indicators and barriers, and some areas of application. We have documented number of success stories. Whatever time I have, I will discuss few. What I believe that it is a continuous application of preventive environmental strategy. It is not one-time activity like end-of-life solution. And this environmental strategy continues, which is applied to process, products, and services. It is just not like your end-of-life where you have to take some inlet parameters, design an ETP or CTP, and then go for the outlet. No, it is not one-time activity, and it addresses, which is very important, on processes, products, and services. So therefore, RECP, I would say, at one hand, it is there is increase in productivity. It's a part of environment management. Ultimately, idea is to reduce risk to human and the environment. Therefore, we are also addressing human development concept. Just to give you a small background about this concept, how it has emerged long back in the year 1972, where first international conference on environmental was held, and with that concern of environment related issues, many countries have started with the new ministry of under Ministry of Environment. And so that was what I believe in the year long 72, though our Water Act came in the year 74, followed by Environment Protection Act 1986. But again in 87, at global level, there was a report known as the Bunderton Land Report, which providing concepts of sustainable development. So what I understand that it was the first terminology of sustainable development emerged in the year 1987, where we had already Water Act 74 and EP Act 1986, followed by UNEP started, UNEP at that time, now UN Environment. They have started initiative of cleaner production, realizing that lot many solutions have already been implemented on end of pipe. Why can't we do something before pipe, and that is cleaner production. And thank that our summit in 1992 with Agenda 21 also set goals of sustainable development, where we are one of the partner and signatory as well, followed by UN Sustainable 17 goals, where we have committed to achieve by 2030. And then in 1994, the UNIDO and UNEP together initiated the establishment of what we call National Cleaner Production Centers. So they identified many countries where there is a potential of waste minimization or cleaner production. And initially, almost in 1994, more than 20 such national cleaner production centers were established. And 1998, they prepared an international declaration. And that this was the year when in 1999, 98, 99, they approached to Government of India with the concept of CP initially, followed by RECP. And they selected 3 states in our country, namely Punjab, Karnataka, and Gujarat. Unfortunately, GEIDC, that is Gujarat Industrial Development Corporation, which is an agency of Government of Gujarat to promote and to establish industrial estates, has hosted this center. So it started working from 1999, working more and more on CP orientation and awareness program, because that was needed. The industries were not aware, and so that is the first. Followed by, we have started conducting training programs, and third and very important is for CP assessment, RECP assessment rather, to demonstrate the real implementation case studies, to motivate other industries to follow. And we are also involved in preparing guidelines on cleaner production and on different industrial sector. Fortunately, we are also part of ENVIS, Environment Information System, a portal hosted by Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, where we are working on the theme of chemical waste and toxicology, and we are resource partner for the ministry on collection, collation, and dissemination of success stories of RECP. So that is how we in Gujarat started long back in 1999, and as on date we have a separate entity under the Industries Department of the state government. So the idea, as I told you, that on one side it is economic, that is production efficiency. We have to optimize the product use of natural resources, and that is why we call resource efficiency. That includes material, energy, and water, followed by environment management, because idea is to minimize the impact on environment due to pollution, and that is what through the reduction of waste and emissions. And as I told you, that ultimately it is a social, because we are also committed to achieve UN sustainable 17 goals for the human development. So ultimately, with this philosophy of production efficiency, environment management, and human development, we believe that RECP addresses. If you talk of tools, or rather what we are practicing as per the structured tools defined by UNIDO, is a good housekeeping, for example. It is the most simple tool where low-hanging fruits, followed by input material changes. So in good housekeeping, you will see the leakages, the spillages, the losses in handling of raw material and product. followed by the input material changes. We are trying that how best we can use the non-toxic raw material instead of toxic material. For example, in dyes and dye, we are trying for natural dyes instead of synthetic dyes. And the process control, which is very important in MSME, that is somehow missing. So we are optimizing the process, which is one of the important tool, and going for the equipment modifications, because what I observed while working in more than 500 MSME in Gujarat, that the equipments which they were using is very old and needs modification, needs most efficient. And then we are also talk of technology change, like introduction of green chemistry in some of the process, the catalyst, the type of catalyst. And then while we're doing this, we also think that how best, if we cannot have new technologies or green technologies, how best we can develop the techniques, the upgradation of existing technology through better techniques. And then we also explore possibility of on-site reuse and recycling, or also there is a possibility of creation of some byproduct. And if required, we also suggest the product modification. If we talk of methodology, it is well defined again by UNIDO, which we are following, because at first step we have to plan and organize, because most of our industry's mindset is towards end of pipe, particularly in Gujarat, because we have got we have created so many treatment facilities at common level. To tell you about more than 30 common effluent treatment plants, followed by 10 common secure landfill site for hazardous waste disposal, followed by a common multi-effective operator, this incinerator, multi-spreader, and whatnot. So their mindset is already there that we are, yeah, I'm a member of all these facilities, so my environment has been taken care of. So it is very important that we need to have the management commitment, and then we have a well-designated CP team, RECP team, where the persons who are working on the floor, on the process, are the members, including CP assessor from my side, like me or my colleagues. And then we establish a baseline RECP profile, and then just walk through the different processes to develop a flow diagram and eco map. And then we initially assessment, we find out the major focus where there are most waste streams. So in RECP, what I suggest and what I keep telling, that you go and identify the waste, identification of waste, characterization of that waste, and then causes and options, why it is there, how it is there, when it is there, what it is there. And then for audit focus, we go for detailed assessment through developing material, energy, and water balances, checking the stoichiometry of the reaction. And then we go for assessment of root cause of that inefficiency and why the waste is generated. And based on the tools, as I discussed in my previous slide, we generate RECP options. Each option is being reviewed, that how technically it is feasible, financial viable, and ultimately there must be improvement in environment. Then we prepare a monitoring, the implementation plan, give to the industry, and then we also monitor how it is being implemented. And once implemented, I will show you the certain parameters where we verify. And then once it is done, we go for the next question. So that is what I said. It is a continuous strategy. It is not one-time activity. So when I talk of certain monitor or certain bench, certain parameters, so generally we go for resource productivity in terms of that how much energy, material, and water is consumed per ton of product. So how much water in maybe kiloliter or cubic meter, material in terms of kg or ton, or energy in terms of the unit kWh is being consumed per ton of the production. And then we compare before RECP and after RECP. So that will tell us that how much we are able to reduce their material consumption, their water consumption, and how much productivity is increased in terms of material. At the same time, we also go for monitoring like pollution intensity. We also check sometimes carbon intensity or carbon footprint, that emissions per unit of product, also the solid waste generation and wastewater generation per unit of product. So these are the some 6 parameters we compare before RECP and after RECP. So that result tell us that, yeah, here we could able to achieve some of the reduction out of these 6 parameters. If you talk of benefits, you already discussed in your very question that while there is an increasing productivity by reducing waste, so therefore there is an increase in economic benefits. It's very simple. And it is a continuous environmental improvement, and therefore there is the improvement in environmental situation as well. So these are the main benefits, and here whatever investment we propose, there is a calculated payback period also. But at the same time, it is not easy. We have been doing for last more than 15 years, but there are so many barriers, like there is a difficult in getting attitudinal change. So there is a willingness to accept this concept is still tough. We have been working hard to convince that, well, it is a better solution than what you suggest as an end of pipe. But then motivational and attitudinal change is still a sort of a question mark, particularly in MSc sector, because from the organization point of view, if you talk of a MSME, then there are people who takes decision, and those people who are working on floor, there are always some misunderstanding between them. So sometimes, though the top management is willing to do, the people who are working on floor, they are not ready to. There is always resistance to change, and that is the difficulty. From economic point of view, sometimes industry also tell, well, you have suggested good options, but here to implement, I have to incur some investment, and that is still some problem. Though I'll show you that in our industrial policy, there is a financial assistance also. But this economic time, so many times they will tell, no, it is not right time for us. You may come later on. We are passing through a very bad situation. So that is also, and sometimes we get there is some policy checking sort of thing, because when you go to for certain changes, I explained you, there is always some apprehension of the industry from State Pollution Control Board. So in general, these are the barriers which we are facing when we go for the real RECP assessment. Further, there are many examples and areas of application, as I told you, that how we do it with the water, raw materials, power, waste, and effluent. And with these areas, there are certain case studies within the time given to me. For example, if energy is concerned, the three head I have selected. What are the sources where energy is used? When we go to industry, we just find out what are the sources where this energy is used, with what purpose, why are you using, and at the same time, what are the losses. Then we go for the causes. Once the sources are identified, why it is there, what factors influence these energy uses and losses, and then we generate options based on our tools. And for example, these are the probable checklists which we have been using. We go for ask them to go for surveying and repairing of steam leaks, which is very common in MSME. Many times their steam traps are not working, their water pipeline, the tap and all that, and therefore they also have to go for regular surveying and repairing to attend it any leakages in hot or cold pipe. And one of the important is insulation. I will show you one industry where how insulation was poor, and therefore checklist also say reduce the compressed air pressure to minimum acceptable level, which is normally 70 to 90 psi. Also eliminate the use of compressed air knives as much as possible. Convert the plant lighting. The lighting is very common, and we suggest them to go for the most efficient lights like T5 or LED. And then ensure your HVAC filters, condenser, evaporator coils, and annually at least once in a year you must clean it, which is also missing in MSME. And conduct employers training, to train them, to make them aware is not only to train them also is one of the part of our checklist. I will show you one example. For example, we have done this radiography in one of our waste paper industries, and through that we came to know that there was almost 18% of energy losses just because of poor insulation. This is another case study where we have done in a ceramic, where their kiln was modified, because as you know, the more the heavy the kiln and the furniture, there will be more gas consumption. It's very simple and common sense. So the conventional kiln was just changed to a extruded beds, and with that it's a lighter weight, so the weight is reduced, and therefore the consumption of gas was also reduced, which has resulted almost reduction in weight by 20, by just reducing the weight by 22%. With whatever investment they have done, the calculated payback period was only 3 months. So very simple. Another, if we can take, is adjusting the RPM of a pump, a reaction pump. There was an industry which was, they were using pump and motor for 30-meter head with a discharge of 920 meter cube per hour capacity, and consumption of electricity was observed 78 kilowatt hour. So when we realized that the RPM of that pump was 1300 plus, and then we optimize that, can we reduce it further, and we keep on taking trials by reducing the RPM itself, and we found that at RPM of 1000, it was the most optimized, which did not hamper the rate of reaction and mass of transfer rate. So we optimized the simple RPM from 1300 to 1000 only, which reduces their energy consumption with no investment. The saving was almost more than 1.5 lakhs per year. So this is how simple we have modified the things. Another examples are usually of the chemical, because in Gujarat we have many MSME involved in intermediates of dyes, pharma and agro, and the special chemicals and all that. So again, from sources point of view, we just go and find out what are the sources where chemicals are used, with what purposes, and what is their effect in terms of product or conversion, and how they generate into waste. Then we go for the causes of this, what factors influence the use and effect of these chemicals, and then we generate options how we can minimize the waste generated through the use of chemical. So this is the checklist for the chemical use. We have to prepare just a list of raw materials and auxiliaries which are used in the process of an industry, and what are the functions of these chemicals and raw materials, and what are the quantities which they are using. And then we assign the cost of the raw materials and auxiliary, and what hazardous waste it is generated, and what is the characteristics of that hazardous waste. For example, one case study, sorry, some slide some missing here. In agrochemical sector, well, there was a it's intermediate for agro, where they were using a carbon tetrachloride to mix it with acrylonitrile, that is ACN, and with the help of cupric chloride and catalyst DACL as a buffer solution, a solvent is resulting to form a tetra chlorobionitrate, that is TBN, and upon the acid hydrolysis they were getting the final product of CMAC. So we check the quantity of acrylonite ACN, and then we realized that based on the stoichiometry, they were not using the optimized quantity, but more than what is required, and therefore we could able to reduce the amount of that ACN with the trial and all that, and we optimize, which is causes a significant cost benefit. I think the slide which I had given yesterday was not completed, because outcome, what I understand, because the cost is reduced, there was no investment, and the reduction in cost has resulted saving of almost more than 5 lakhs per annum to that industry. Another is material efficiency and waste minimization. That is again from the sources point of view, where it is used, with what purpose, what are the losses, what are the causes for this, and what could be the options. So checklist is again waste streams. We just, as I told you, that we go in identification of waste streams and we categorize as hazardous and non-hazardous, and we go for the details of input materials we use to generate waste streams, and the quantity of that one, and they check the efficiency of the process, which is very important in any MSME, because we have found the efficiency of the process, therefore the production yield is somewhere hardly 70 or 75%. Does it means that almost 25 to 30% is being is going as a waste, which could be unreacted mass or could be a byproduct. So with this process control, there are number of case studies we have generated, which are available on my website. In very recently, one of the chemical industries, again, with the checking of that process reaction to the real stoichiometry, we could able to reduce the quantity of catalyst itself. So there was no mole to mole reaction, proper mole to mole reaction, which we could achieve comparing the stoichiometry of that process with the real consumption of that catalyst. Again, one of the source, one of the factor, as I told you, is water and reduction of wastewater. So again, where water is used, with what purposes, and then what are losses and the pollution problem, and the causes. What are the causes for these water losses and pollution, and how best we can minimize to generate options. Because idea in RECP is to go for resource efficiency at the same time the minimization of waste. So one of the case study, this is the checklist where we go for regular program of surveying and repairing of water leaks, design of their pump seals, which is also missing in MSME. Then we also optimize their water treatment plant, because many of food process industries or pharma industries need a very high quality of water. So they have a small water treatment. So we also optimize their water treatment and optimizing cleaning and saniting procedures, optimize packaging, washing and rinsing. That is also very important. Also go for the optimization of their cooling towers, which is very common in MSME, and simply optimize the water hoses in their sanitary system. So these are the checklists we use while going for the water analysis. A case study again in one of our ceramic industry, where it is a grinding ball mill. They put all ingredients like raw material, water and riverbed stones, and then there is a grinding, and it is a wet. The water is added, which is again filtered through 40 ms mesh size. And earlier that filtered water was they used to send to drain, and then we realized, oh, we can store instead of draining it. And again, since it is a wet grinding ball mill, again the same water can be used. So ultimately it reduces their fresh water demand, and we could able to save the charges of water, and which is very important. And almost more than 8 kiloliter per day we could able to reduce their fresh water demand just by recycling of that filtered water. So this is what the management internalization there. It is a very well planned and structured methodology, and therefore we have to plan a good RECP options, monitor it, and then with the benchmarking, I have shown you the 6 parameters we compare and check, and then the management is sometime agreed to it, or sometime there is again some resistance, some apprehension, which we are trying to overcome. Again, few slides regarding the realizing of cleaner production. Fortunately, in Gujarat, a subject on cleaner production has been introduced at the graduation level of engineering. And incidentally, the book which we have complied with the theory of concept of methodology and tools, and many success stories are being used by those students as a reference material. This is one of the important gap which I felt while working on RECP, that industries are doing themselves, and many academia institutions, they are just bothering about finishing their course, conducting exam and all that, and facilitator or government is simply watching. So at least I have started interlinking of these three major stakeholders, where we invite abstracts of graduate and postgraduate and research scholars, students work on some research and development which could be useful for the industry. So we invite the abstract from the students, we invite also students, and many a time I also take some real problem from the industries and assign these as a project to the students, because I'm associated with a number of academic institutions. So here I'm also coming up, and we find many times a very good work on research and development from the students. Fortunately, there is a political will to more and more go for RECP. The first time in our country, that is Gujarat state, has instituted a cleaner production award, which is given to the industry who has done the best exemplary work of implementation of RECP, which result into their reduction in their water consumption, so a reduction in wastewater, reduction in solid waste, reduction in energy consumption, and reduction in emissions. So this is what the award is given by the state government, right from 2005 and 2006, when Honorable Prime Minister was here as a Chief Minister. Every year it is given. Also, as I told you that we realize that there is some economical barriers also. Industries do not have small fund to implement. So there is a scheme of what assistance for environmental protection measures in our industrial policy 2020, where if an industry has implemented a cleaner production concept, RECP concept, which has reduced their water consumption or material consumption or wastewater generation or energy consumption, 35% of the total expenditure with a cap of rupees 35 lakhs is being reimbursed by the government. So that is what we have created. Subject is there, a policy is there for CP award, and also policy is there for the financial assistance. And with all these efforts, we see that at least we are able to generate some success stories. Again, I'm thank to WRI and my colleague Ashok, who has given me this opportunity to share our views and all that. And just to tell you, we are also working on retrofitting of our existing industrial estate into eco-industrial park, where we have more and more RECP at unit level. We also go for the upgradation of common infrastructure like roads, water supply, drainage, the common effluent treatment plant, or common treatment storage disposal facilities for solid waste. And also we are working on the industrial symbiosis, that how best waste of an industry can be used as a raw material or some resource for the industry. Thank you very much for giving me this chance. Thank you, Tejaswini. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jain. That was indeed such a very, very insightful overview of what RECP means as a concept, and it sets a very good context for the rest of the session that would build upon this conceptual foundation. So to everyone in the audience, if you have any questions for Dr. Jain, please feel free to write them in the chat box, and my colleague Varun will take them up in the Q&A session that we have lined up after the next speaker. Okay, so moving on, next I would like to call upon Mr. Atik Sheikh, Counselor of Energy and Climate Change at the CII Godrej Green Business Center. At CII Godrej GBC, Atik is involved in the GHG inventorization and energy efficiency activities of various industrial and corporate clients. He is an IRCA certified lead auditor for energy management systems and a certified associate in project management. Previously, he was involved in preparing case reviews and a policy review for eco-industrial parks under UNIDO project, which includes understanding and assessment of current practices relating to resource efficiency and cleaner production, which is RECP the topic today, management of parks and common services. Atik holds a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Nirma University in Ahmedabad and an MBA with a specialization in energy and environment from Symbiosis International University, Pune. Thank you, Atik, for co-organizing this event and with us and being here today to talk about how RECP can be adopted by the MSME sector. On to you.
Thank you. So I would request you to please give me the presentation operation option, please.
Hi, Atik. I've already given.
You have already given? Okay. Okay, yeah, thank you. Good afternoon to all the participants and the speakers for this program. What I will do is that I will be just initially, like as Bharat Jain sir has already highlighted the concept of RECP, how it is useful and what are the various methods. What I will do is that I will spend some time in establishing the case, like why RECP is very much relevant it is relevant for us to take it forward in the industry. And then just a brief RECP concept, as Bharat Jain sir has already covered. I will not spend much time there. But also what I will do is that I will highlight some of the sectors where we see a lot of potential for RECP interventions, where we did a mapping study for more than 70 sectors to identify where the RECP can help maximum benefit. And then RECP audit, how to conduct it. And last, I want to share two of the tools which we have been using to conduct our RECP related studies, like material flow cost accounting and life cycle assessment study, on how it helps the company or the industry to view their environmental impacts and reduce them by taking necessary RECP measures. Just a moment. Yeah. So if I talk about material consumption in India, like if I see, India is one of the largest material consumer in the world. Like if I talk about last 4 years, 4 decades, where we have seen that material consumption has grown substantially by almost 7 times. Like we can clearly see that this increasing trend of material consumption is because of how we are moving from a agriculture dependent economic country to more to the industrial society, where we see that the manufacturing, consumption in the domestic level, commercial level, all those things are increasing. But moving forward, we see that this material consumption is expected to double from the current levels by 2030, because there is a significant focus on economic growth, where we are talking about infrastructure, then industrialization with Atmanirbhar Bharat. We see that more and more material consumption will increase in India. And also, like if I say, though our absolute consumption in terms of material is third largest in the world, but if I talk about per capita consumption, still it's on the lower side, where our consumption is around 7 tons per capita. And if I talk about global average, it was around 10 tons of domestic material consumption. Also, if we see in India right now, GCPC as a government organization have been working extensively on promotion of resource efficiency and cleaner production. But at a national level, for example, in India, we do not see such policies or initiatives practiced by other state governments also. Like GCPC is one example where definitely it has a lot of potential if it is extended to other states also, but still we see that the RECP as a concept has not been promoted by various government. Also, but the good thing is that recently MOEFCC and Government of India, they have announced a national resource efficiency policy, which is in draft stage right now, and they have highlighted why resource efficiency is important as a nation, and also they have highlighted certain sectors like automobile, construction, where we see that definitely in bringing in the resource efficiency part, we will see substantial improvement. Now, if I talk about resource efficiency, the previous slide I talked about the absolute numbers in terms of material consumption. But one indicator which was also highlighted by Bharat Jain sir was on the resource productivity indicator. Now, if you see India's resource productivity, we have improved substantially, which is to produce $1 of economic output, how much material we are consuming. So if you see from 1980 to the current level, we have substantially improved, which was around 0.464, the resource productivity indicator. We are now around, at 2016, we are around 1.13. So definitely we are seeing that the resources which we are using, we are doing better in terms of conversion efficiency or usage part, or maybe some other measures like recycling or reusing we are introducing. And because of that reason, we see that the resource productivity has improved. And also one other reason, maybe the I would say economic structure, where service sector becoming more and more prominent, we see that the resource productivity is getting improved. So definitely we have seen that the resource productivity is improving. In last 3 decades, it has improved by 2.5 times. But when you compare with some of the other countries like some of the OECD and European nations, we are definitely not better. I would say we still have a lot of potential to improve our resource productivity here. Just to give an example, we are currently at 1.1. If I talk about Germany and other states like United Kingdom, Japan, all those, the resource productivity numbers are much better. So this indicates that our resource productivity, though we have improved substantially in the last 3 decades, but still there is a lot of potential for us to improve and generate more economic output with what material we are consuming. So here the role of resource efficiency, the cleaner production comes into prominence. Now, if I talk about from the industries, MSME and industrial sector as a whole, Government of India has already committed to sustainable development goals, where under each indicator, like all the goals which are there, 2 important goals where we see the role of resource efficiency in cleaner production is definitely with respect to goal number 8, where we talk about decent work and economic growth, where target 8.4 is primarily talking about how we can improve resource efficiency in consumption and the production part. Similarly, the 12th goal, which is responsible consumption and production, here it talks about specifically more on the natural resources, sustainable management and use of natural resources. So here as an industry, as an MSME sector, definitely all the initiatives which we'll be taking will help the country to meet these targets here. Now, in line with the global phenomena of moving from, I would say, end of pipe solution to a more integrated management of the resources, pollution, etc., we are seeing the trend getting shifted in the policy making also. With this, Government of India has introduced resource efficiency policy, where NREP, it aims to implement resource efficiency across all the resources, including biotic and abiotic resources, sectors and life cycle stages. So here, if we see the primary things which the NREP talks about is first, what is the scope of national resources efficiency policy, and it encompasses all the resources and materials which we use as a nation here. Also, what specific things the policy talks about is on the indicators that we will have certain specific indicators where we will measure our progress in terms of how efficiently we are using our resources. And also, they are saying that to increase the resource efficiency in various sectors, the Government of India will be introducing some of the policy, regulatory, and market instruments. Like GCPC is a good example, where in the Gujarat Industrial Policy, if you refer, they have, like Bharat Jain sir has highlighted, they have started giving the incentives for implementation of cleaner production measures, resource efficiency measures, even for common facilities project. Where at an industrial cluster level or a park level, we implement certain common facilities like effluent treatment plant. But in Gujarat, you will find that they are giving incentives for even a common boiler project, where if you see in the other states, they are just talking about right now in terms of R&D centers or CETP. But Gujarat, because of GCPC initiatives, is going step ahead as compared to other states also in terms of incorporating resource efficiency, cleaner production in the industrial policy of the state. Also here, the policy also highlights that the role of industry and stakeholders is critical to achieve those targets here. But the thing is that right now resource efficiency policy is focused on certain few sectors, but definitely depending on the success and the maturity which we will have, we will see that it will be implemented at a wide scale, and we will see much more impact in different sectors. Now, we have seen the transition happening in the country, before the Air Pollution Act or Water Control and Prevention Act, which was introduced. More of the approach was on the ignore pollution, or maybe we will address at the end of pipe, or that was sort of a objective, I would say, or the intent of the industry. Like I would not say concern, but I would say that it was lack of awareness that how our operations are impacting. But as interventions by various international organizations, government departments, and also some of the acts which were introduced later in India, like Environment Protection Act, Environmental Impact Assessment, what we have seen is that right now in India, we have moved from I would say, a 2 or 3 part at end of pipe treatment or dilution and dispersion to becoming more proactive, and we are focusing right now on RECP, or I would say resource efficiency and cleaner production. So here, if you see, like as Bharat Jain sir has already highlighted, resource efficiency in cleaner production is nothing but producing more with less resources and lesser pollution. So that is the ultimately the outcome of implementation of resource efficiency and cleaner production measures. Now, what at CII we have done is that we have understood how this policy and regulatory landscape has evolved over the time. And definitely, if you see, the policies have come depending on certain events which have happened, like air and pollution, water act were there because of the conference on environment, and then subsequently the acts were introduced in India. Then we saw some of the unfortunate tragedies and like Bhopal gas tragedy and some of the environmental pollution related cases. And we saw that Environmental Protection Act came into the picture. And then subsequently, we saw that rising waste problem with respect to hazardous, municipal solid waste, etc. We saw from 1998 to 2007 or current level, we see that many of the management rules for waste like hazardous, biomedical waste, municipal solid waste, all that came into picture. Recently, like if you go back to a few years, the new policy which were there on the waste management, the Government of India has specifically recognized the co-processing as one of the pillar where we can directly take waste to the cement plants and try to dispose it there, because they have a tendency, like cement plant as a process, they can capture or take waste and undergo the combustion and can be used as a fuel. So definitely what we are seeing is that because of such events and such initiatives like by UNIDO, GCPC, etc., we have seen that there is a transition from, I would say, where we talk about end of pipe solution to more integrated approach towards environmental pollution, and where energy efficiency, water consumption, waste management, all it comes into the purview of RECP here. Now, why RECP and MSME is important? Definitely, all of you will agree that there is a significant potential which exists for improvement in MSME, because the thing is that many of the industries or the clusters which we are operating have been established some 20-25 years back. And what has happened is that with time, there is a technology obsolescence which has come, and it is a common phenomenon in Indian MSMEs. Just to give you a few examples, like if you go to any MSME, like where we have done many energy audits, we saw that the motors, the pump sets which are running are at least 10 to 15 years old. Okay, and the efficiency of those pump sets, because of the design restriction then, was around 45-50%. But today we have pump efficiency up to 90%, which has been provided even for a smaller HP or a smaller capacity pump. So definitely there is a lot of improvement. Also, what we've seen is that there is a lack of penetration of modern and efficient technology commonly, which has been observed. Like in Ankleshwar, if you go and see many boilers, they do not have a latest generation burners, or I would say sometimes you will not find economizers installed for the boiler where they can recover the heat, or condensate recovery is not there at the plant. So these are all the challenges we have seen in the MSME sector. Definitely the lack of latest technologies like operational inefficiency, technology vintage, and resource intensive because of the technology part that is on the higher side. But at the same time, the profit margins, the sustenance or expansion to the quality-based markets like European markets, because of such restriction, is on the lower side. So definitely, if we focus on RECP, one thing is that we will save cost, our environmental performance will improve, and ultimately it will help us to become more competitive in terms of operations and management. And at the same time, we'll be able to compete with the global market. We have seen that in Ankleshwar and some other cluster like Nandeshwari, Vatwa, we have companies with a world-class manufacturing practices where they compete with global markets, and they are providing solutions and products to the global audience here. So definitely RECP as a concept is very important in MSME sector. Now, this was the, sorry for the font size, which is, I'm sure is very small here. But the key message which I want to give is that if you see the latest classification done by Government of India on the, by CPCB, sorry, on the categorization of industry on white, green, orange, and red, which was revised 2 to 3 years back, we've seen that for the certain sectors, like at least 50 sectors, we have seen that the pollution intensity in terms of air pollution, water pollution, and hazardous waste generation is on the higher side. But at the same time, from our experience of working with different MSME clusters, we see that the energy efficiency, water conservation, material conservation, waste management, clean manufacturing, and cleaner production practices are also on the higher side. So here, if you see the pollution intensity is on the higher side, at the same time, if we have such high intensity, definitely there is a lot of potential where we can work and try to reduce our pollution intensity there. So definitely with such measures on RECP, which Bharat sir has highlighted in water, energy, waste, chemical usage, like the checklist which have been mentioned there, we see that if we implement those, then definitely the pollution intensity, maybe today these companies are coming under red category, but because of the RECP measure which we'll be introducing, which will become sort of a business as usual phenomena in few years of time, and definitely the Government of India will revise the sectors and maybe they will come from red to orange category, like we've seen in current cases also, where many of the sectors which were initially in under the red category of pollution control board have been shifted to orange or to a green category, depending on the pollution intensity which they have been implemented. So these were some of the 40 sectors which I wanted to highlight in terms of pollution intensity and where we see a lot of potential. So this is some 30 sectoral which I have highlighted, where I feel that based on our study, we see that the scoring which we have developed based on RECP potential, we see that this 31 sectors out of 70 which are included under CPCB guidelines, we see that a lot of RECP potential is there for establishing the resource efficiency cleaner production cases there. Now, if you see RECP has been implemented in Indian MSMEs, definitely you all must be implementing certain measures in one way or another. But what we have seen is that most of the technology upgradation projects have been focused only on energy. Okay, even though you implement certain projects for cleaner production, the thing is that somehow the industry is not able to highlight it, like what are the savings in terms of waste or how much waste have been avoided to landfill. So we see that though the industries have implemented a lot of projects in RECP, but still we do not have indicators. That is the reason we should establish indicators like highlighted in the previous presentation, that energy efficiency we should have an indicator, water consumption, wastage we should have an indicator. So any measure which we implement, we will be able to convert it into some success stories which can be shared with others, and also highlight our achievements to our stakeholders here. So if you see implemented in industries in certain forms like energy, it is the focus on. Then water, in case of sectors where we see there is a lot of usage, water intensive sectors like textile, chemical, we see that water related measures have been implemented. Waste management through lean manufacturing, how much waste we can reduce, that has been implemented. Then renewable energy, WRI speaker will be taking detail on how renewable energy can help Indian MSMEs to become more cleaner and greener. But all of these RECP measures have been driven by cost savings and improvement in the operations. And what you see is that now, if you go some 25 years or 15 years back, the industries, if we say that someone is coming from pollution control board, like we want to measure this, or like even if as a CII we go, then if we ask for city or something like that, then they don't share any data. But what we see is that now industries have become more open, they want to improve and they share their concerns with us. And that we see that just not on the compliance part, they want to better the compliance parameters and have better numbers in terms of pollution intensity. In terms of pollution requirement, they want to improve further. So that is how we are seeing that how RECP or I would say approach to RECP has been changing in the MSME sector. But some of the key drivers which are there in RECP is enforcement of environmental legislations and policies. Then certain requirements from businesses like suppliers, they emphasize on having certain requirements like you should not use any solid or liquid fuel, or you should have a clean room practices. All those things, certain RECP drivers are there. And ultimately, the main important thing is the utility cost. Today, the utility costs are, in some of the industries are very high. And they have to, I would say, because of such utility costs, they are not able to be more competitive as compared to their other peers here. So that is the reason I would say RECP implementation in Indian MSMEs is very much important. Now, some of the key RECP initiatives which have been are done by government, like government-led initiatives like NMCP is one, where they have certain programs on lean manufacturing, and certain green manufacturing programs have been included under NMCP. Then credit-linked subsidy scheme on upgradation of certain technologies. Then Z rating, zero defect rating by QCI under MOMSME. So that is a good rating system where many MSMEs are getting benefited by adoption of such rating here. Then MSME cluster development program by Government of India. Then Bureau of Energy Efficiency, promotion of energy efficiency and renewable energy in MSME clusters. So they are working with numbers of clusters in India and helping them to improve their energy efficiency. And last, definitely GCPC, Bharat Jain sir has covered. But some of the important things which GCPC is promoting are different tools for promoting RECP, like they have developed toolkits on how to conduct resource efficiency cleaner production, like in Dahej, in Vatwa, in Nandesri, they have implemented various projects with respect to improvement in industrial parks. So various initiatives have been implemented on RECP. Then financial institution, many schemes have been provided for implementation of RECP measures like SIDBI, 4E program, then SBI Energy Efficiency Uptake program. Then there are certain voluntary programs which focuses on improvement of resource efficiency and cleaner production. Now, if you see how RECP has been implemented in MSMEs, then one, we can start with RECP audits, where we can look at material, energy balances, waste audits, and lean manufacturing. Then we can go, if we have achieved certain measures by implementation of RECP audits, we can definitely go for some rating and certification like Green Co, Z rating, ISO certification in terms of 14,001, 50,001, life cycle assessment standard. So various rating and certification we can adopt. And to ultimately to implement this RECP in MSMEs, we require certain tools so that MSMEs do not have to spend much time in identifying measures, but if they implement such tools which become a continual basis, then definitely they can improve the RECP performance here. So some of the tools are MFC, material flow cost accounting, LCA, chemical leasing, industrial ecology, green chemistry, etc., which can be implemented by MSME cluster all as a sector here. But two important tools which I thought I will cover because considering our experience in MFC and LCA, I'm just sharing two examples on how this concept can help industry to improve their RECP performance. Now, first, I will talk about RECP audit. This has been already covered by Bharat Jain sir. So how you can start the RECP audit? One thing which is there definitely, you should start with first overall input and output balance in terms of material, energy, waste, products, etc. And then with the checklist which you have, or technology mapping exercise which you will do. And also sometimes you can compare your performance with the benchmarks which are available, and you can see where are the opportunities for improvements are. So you can undertake energy mapping, material mapping, water consumption, waste mapping, then analysis of water and air emissions, and see whether you are meeting the compliance or how much you are below the compliance requirement. All those things you can do. And then once you do this, you will be able to identify where are the opportunities for improvements are there. And once you implement or plan to implement, you can do the necessary feasibility analysis in terms of what is the technical feasibility, financial feasibility in terms of payback period or internal rate of return. All those parameters you can do. So this is the RECP audit, which definitely like just not conventional energy audit, but you can move from energy just to energy to incorporating many more measures in your overall RECP audit. One tool which I wanted to cover was on material flow cost accounting. So this was a pilot project which we did with UNIDO in 2017, where we piloted this concept called as material flow cost accounting, which has been extensively practiced in Japan and some of the European countries to improve their material productivity in the industry. So what we did was we piloted this concept in 2 sectors. One is on the engineering, 5 units, and then food and beverages, 5 units we piloted. The focus of this project was to first do the material flow cost accounting, understand where the companies are losing money in terms of material, highlight where are the wastages happening, and subsequently, once you identify the wastages, you have to suggest measures on how they can reduce it. And then ultimately focus on improvement like reduction, material conservation, yield improvement, all those parameters we focused on. And this program was supported by UNIDO, and we had our MFC expert who supported this program, where he guided us on how to do an MFC. So the approach was initially started with.
I think you have about 5 more minutes.
Yeah, sure. 5 minutes I will quickly close. Yeah. The approach was that we initially focused on capacity development. We did the training program at the industry. Then we explained them what is expected in the material flow cost accounting. So we handholded them, created certain systems to monitor what are the material wastages, because they were not measuring it. That we did, and jointly with them we identified opportunities to improvement, and then quantification of savings, and ultimately the implementation part. So it was a new concept. It took 2 to 3 months for implementation, and because of the collaborative approach with the plant team, we were able to execute the project. So this is one case study which I wanted to include. This is a case study from a storage solution manufacturing company, where the office stationery, the storage solutions they were manufacturing. So what as a first step we did was, you can see this Excel sheet which is on the back side. We developed a material flow for each process. So what we did was, there was different processes like blanking, turret punching, press shop, pre-treatment, powder coating. So for each process, we identified what were the inputs, what were the outputs. Now the outputs we measured not only in terms of products, but also in terms of wastages. In inputs, not only we included the raw material part, but even for the consumables like lubricating oil or packing material, which often we miss, and we just focus on the raw material part we were missing. So all those parameters we included in our flow model, and we measured the productivity here. So first, you can see that this is the CTLL process. We saw that these are the different materials which are going as an input, and these were the wastages which were getting generated. So this was the input, which were around 282 tons as a steel input, and the wastages in terms of steel, the material losses were around 4 tons. So this is a good, I would say, a very high amount of material losses which were happening. So what we did a detailed analysis to understand where are the major scrap getting generated. So initially, when we were having a discussion with them, all of the plant management thought that the major scrap generation is happening from a press shop. But what was happening is that we found that the major losses are happening at the turret punching section, because we process-wise we measured the scrap generation here. So what we did was, the turret punching was generating more scrap as opposed to thought of press shop, which is a major contributor. But what we did was, subsequently we proposed certain kaizens on how they should cut the product, and how some excess modification in the machine we suggested, and they were able to save the material losses which are happening. In addition to that, what we also found from our material flow cost accounting is that the storage solution, once their product are manufactured, they were shipping it to Australia. Okay, because this was an export-oriented unit which was situated in SEZ. What was happening is that in case of certain missing item, like you missed one good or you have certain damage which is going directly to the customer. So what was customer doing? They found that they opened the box, out of 10 panels, 9 are okay, but one is damaged. So what they was that they were reordering the missing or damaged item. Now, if you see the component cost which was there, which was around 681, but because there was a reorder which was happening and it was to be sent to the customer immediately, the component cost was on the higher side, which was in range of 820 to 13,000, because they were sending the product via flight to the customer. But also what was happening is that this product was all the processes is such that you need to run one process in a day to meet the product requirement. Next day, you will have to set all the machines again if you want to manufacture a new product. So even for this one reorder item, they had to spend some 2 to 3 hours to produce it. But once the order is over, they were not having any extra material. All those things were getting repetitive. So what was happening is that there was an opportunity cost which was happening to the company, which was around 1,30,000. So what was the suggestion was that we suggested them to include the quality check before the dispatch, and they were able to save certain amount of money here. So this was the component cost and replacement study which I have included, which you can go in detail afterwards. This was similarly for beverage company. We did the MFCA, and this were the results. So here the importance was that the productivity which was measured by the plant was only focused on juice which was there being manufactured by them. But there was a lot of water consumption, steam consumption, because it is a food and beverage company. A lot of water is getting used in CIP and other places. So once we see the resource productivity with respect to overall material input, then it was just 65%, not 98%. So this is how MFCA brings a new concept on how you can use your resource productivity and bring new insights to the case study part. So these were some of the suggestions which we did to them by identification of waste and how they can improve it further. The last, I will take 2 minutes. They just need to conclude, and then maybe, sorry for the delay part, but just last 2 minutes. This life cycle assessment study right now has been done by various industries in India, where the focus is to how they can improve the environmental performance across their operations, not only their operations, but even right from cradle to gate analysis. So this was a LC study which we did for a glass manufacturing company. They manufacture perfume bottles for the various cosmetic industries here. And this was the glass manufacturing process where it starts from raw material extraction, then melting at the furnaces, getting the bottles in required shape, then enabling to provide strength, and then packing and sending it to finished goods warehouse. So what we did was we did an LCA study first as a cradle to gate analysis. But here, like as you know, the glass is infinitely, I would say, recyclable. So what is happening is that the glass can be recycled back into the furnace and for our distributor. So what will happen? Any impacts associated with batch house and raw material will be avoided if we recycle glass into our processes. So what we did was we did an analysis to see if we go from recycling to glass, how much impacts will reduce. So with just 25 to 30% of recycling, we will be able to reduce our impact across different environmental categories like climate change, ozone depletion, in range of 13 to 30%. So this was depending on the percentage of recycling which we assumed for conducting our study. And also what we did was to highlight how renewable energy component will help them reduce various environmental impact. If they increase the renewable energy consumption to 20%, all the impact categories they will be able to reduce from 6 to 15% across the major impact categories here. So right now, I guess the syndicate impacts will also highlight on the LCA for the products which you have done. But definitely this LCA as a concept is very, I would say, is being promoted by various industry, and you will see that MSME sector, industrial sectors will be adopting it in near future to improve their environmental performance. To summarize, RECP provides a great opportunity to reduce environmental impacts, but many tools are already available where MSMEs can adopt it, like Z, Green, MFCA, quality tools, supply chain support. And also, there are various programs which have been done by international organization, national organization, which we can I would say, take leverage of and implement RECP measures here. And other than that, some banks have also loan instruments for RECP products, which can be adopted by MSMEs here. So RECP implementation ecosystem is available in the country, and CI would be glad to support MSME if they are interested in any of the tools which I have highlighted here to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Atik. That was a very helpful session with a great overview of the sectoral potential for RECP among MSMEs in India, the approach and how they can implement it, including some key initiatives that you had mentioned. And of course, your case studies that always make these complex concepts very easy to understand and relatable. So before we proceed on to the second part of the session, we'd just like to take 5 minutes to conduct some polls on the concepts covered so far and any questions that the audience may have. So I'd like to invite Varun from WRI India to take this. Thanks. Varun, in case you're speaking,
Thank you. Okay, can you please go to the next slide? Thank you. Yeah. So let's before we go to the questions, we have one question. If you have any more questions, please use the questions pane to type them. Meanwhile, in the meantime, we'll just do 2 quick polls based on the sessions we've just heard from Dr. Bharat Jain and Atik. So I'm launching the first poll now. So which of the following are examples of RECP practices? Your opinion: better process control, technology change, on-site reuse and recycling, or all of the above? So give you about 15 or 20 seconds to answer this. Right. So I hope you can see the results. As you can see, sort of most people have said all of the above, majority of you, and that's correct. So as we were discussing, better process control, technology change, both can sort of help you improve process efficiency or reduce the polluting impacts of the technologies that you use to produce, as well as on-site reuse and recycling can help you reduce material consumption per unit of output that you produce. So all of these are examples of RECP practices, like most of you have said. Let me launch one more poll question. Which of these indicators can be used by an enterprise to track RECP progress? Product output per unit of energy used, product output per unit of material used, greenhouse gas emissions per unit output, waste generation per unit output, or all of the above? Give you another 10 or 15 seconds to finish answering. Right. So again, as the majority of you have correctly said, all of the above are indicators that can be used to track progress on RECP. The first two, product output per unit of energy or material use, are productivity indicators, which indicate how efficiently you're using your input materials. And the second two are sort of what Dr. Bharat Jain was calling pollution intensity indicators. So how much pollution or waste you're producing per unit of output. So all these indicators, whether they are productivity indicators or pollution intensity indicators, are all indicators that can be used to track progress on RECP. Thank you very much for your responses. Now we have one question. The question is, as a small business, what is the first step that we can take to identify how and where to apply RECP in our operation? Maybe I can invite Dr. Bharat Jain to take this question. If Dr. Bharat Jain is still there. Or if not, maybe Atik, you can take it.
Okay, thank you for the question. Like as you mentioned, what are the like as a first step where you can identify on the RECP potential. So my first suggestion would be to identify what are the areas for I would say energy intensive and material intensive operation. So as a first step, you need to do some sort of a basic mapping, not a detailed one, identifying where are the major energy consumption and the material intensity part. Okay. The second step would be to identify in terms of technology when it was installed. Like if you have the installation done for 20, 15 years back, then definitely there is an improvement opportunity which is available. Okay, so you can use certain indicators for like boilers or pump sets. You can use certain indicators in terms of efficiency, what has been the technology. So you can compare with the latest generation and see whether you can improve it further or not. So that would be my suggestion to start with the energy and material balance, identify where are the major energy material intensity consumers. Also in terms of pollution intensity, depending on your sector, as I highlighted in my presentation. If you have those high, then definitely you should focus in terms of the technology mapping part as second step. Establish the productivity indicators, maybe in terms of efficiency, material output per kg of input, etc. Then compare with the current standards, maybe through publicly available database, or you can reach out to the suppliers, or even your past performance. You can see maybe 2-3 years back your efficiency was 80%, but because of lack of operation and maintenance activity today is it at 60%. Then you can come back to that level by taking necessary action. So this would be my suggestion to you in terms of identification of the opportunities here. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Atik, and thanks, Varun. I think we can now begin the second part of the session on how RECP can and has been operationalized by MSMEs. Before I introduce our next speaker, we'd like to show you a video on EcoHide Corporate, a sustainable fashion business. Tejaswini, could you launch the video, please? That was brilliant. With this, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. We have Mr. Kathiresan Arunachalam with us today, the founder of EcoHike and owner of Syndicate Impex, a garment manufacturing and exporting MSME. With a bachelor's in textiles, Mr. Kathir began his own garment factory back in 2006 with just 10 sewing machines. And today, not only have they expanded to 350, but are also the first garment company in India to be certified by CII Greenco, as the video showed, for sustainability auditing. Last year, they launched their own t-shirt brand called EcoHike and are planning to expand this to the European market next year. Thank you, Mr. Kathir, for joining us today. We're really excited to hear about your journey and the sustainability measures you have taken across your operations in EcoHike. Just in the interest of time, if I could request you to speak for about 10 minutes, that would be great. On to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, and hi everyone, the panelists, the organizing team, and the participants. Happy to have the presentation here. So straight away, I just would like to go to the presentation, and can you please, yeah. So here to say about our company, Syndicate Impex, I want to navigate the slide. Next slide. Yeah. So our company Syndicate Impex was started in 2006, and right now we are running with 350 machine capacity, and we are the first company in India to be certified with Greenco certification, which is for sustainability auditor. And during this auditing time of Greenco, we came to know about a lot of things about sustainability, and before I changed the whole perspective of how to look into the garment industry. So before that, we were highly into commercials, and we used to say how to minimize the reduction and how to minimize the production cost and all those things. But whereas when we are working with Greenco auditing, even though we have around 10 to 12 auditing already done in our factory, so this Greenco gives us a very different perspective of how to calculate the resource that we are utilizing for manufacturing every single garment that we are making. So that was a very good audit for us, so which changed our whole perspective of looking into the garment industry. So after the auditing, we thought of launching our own brand called EcoHike, which eco is environment and hike is improving the environment, where we would like to address mainly on recycling, the textile recycling to be precise, and how to minimize the waste, and how to make sure that the garment which we are making is not going to landfill. So that is our main mission statement to start our journey. And moving on to the next slide. Can you? Yeah, this is our first generation company, and this is our factory. So we are the first company to be certified with Greenco certification, and we have a capacity of making around 300,000 t-shirts per month in our in-house facility. And we have the other certifications like organic certifications, SEDEX, and the Walt Disney Company. RAP is World Responsible Apparel Production, and BSCI, OKOTEX, and GRS for Global Recycle Standards. So these are certifications which we have in our factory. So moving on to the next slide. I just want to have a small insight before we start with the presentation. So even though a lot of the participants and the panelists are from various industries, so when it comes to a textile or as a garment, so sure, everyone as a consumer, we have our part to play with, and we have our part in the garment industry. So just a small statistics about the industry. So the number of garments sold in India in 2019 is around 300 crore garments is being sold. So of which more than 50% of the garments are made of polyester, which is a petroleum product, and the sales is expected to rise 11.6% year on year. And the other part is not even 1% of the garment that is being sold is not recycled. And all the rest of the 99% of all the garments is being dumped into landfill, and maybe it takes 5 years or 10 years of time. In European countries, the garments will not be used not more than 1 or 2 years, whereas in India, thanks to our cultural practice, we used to we have known, I mean, we have never have the habit of disposing the garment unless until it is highly not wearable. So that extends the lifetime for around 8 to 10 years maximum. And after that, there is no other facility or no other opportunity for the consumers to recycle it, so which eventually end up in landfill. So the number of garments that is being disposed every year in the landfill. So the polyester garments, it takes 800 years to get it decomposed. So polyester is nothing but the PET garments. PET has been converted into polyester, and again it is a petroleum product, and it is highly hazardous, and it keep on spoiling the landfill. So this we want to change, and we would like to address how we can do. And during the Greenco auditing, we thought of like how to change this scenario and how to come up with a product which truly has a sustainable purpose. So sustainability is not something converting waste of one industry and make it a waste of other industry. Say for example, in India, and not only in India, for the past 5 to 10 years, everyone is speaking about the recycling. That too in the garment industry. The PET, the PET bottle is being converted into the recycled T-shirts and recycled garments. But nobody is aware of, nobody is bothered about what is happening to the end of the life cycle of the garment, which is being converted into of the same T-shirts. So it is again going to the landfill. So we are not doing anything rather than extending the lifetime for next 5 to 10 years. So when PET has been thrown in the landfill, it takes 500 years. And the same garment, after 5 years, it is again thrown into the landfill, and again it takes the same number of years. And this time, it also releases a lot of microfiber into the landfill and also into the water bodies, which is highly contagious and which is highly poisonous for both animals and also for us to drink and consume. It is highly polluting the environment and the water bodies across the world. So this we want to address, and we are trying to come up with a solution for this problem, and we launched this T-shirt. So moving on to the next slide. So here we launched a program called MISO, which is Mission Zero, and we had a mascot, turtle mascot, which denotes that Mission Zero MISO. And in this Mission Zero, what we are trying to do is we are not only trying to recycle the T-shirts, recycle the PET bottle into T-shirt, but again the old T-shirts which is being consumed by the consumer, we will buy back the garments, and we are trying to recycle it again without adding any virgin material and without adding exploiting any natural resources. So by this way, we will like to make sure that the landfill is being removed. So that is our main vision, and we are trying to launch it in Europe next year. And the T-shirts which we are making has a lot of added benefits, and also it comes with a lot of environmental benefits, which I would like to explain in the next slide. So the next slide. So we are also addressing the SDG goals, UN SDG goals, which we are trying to say. So in our company, 80% of our workforce is women, and 100% we are they are provided with hostel and or water and canteen facility. So the SDG goals of 1, 5, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 17 or something which we are addressing, and we are already one of the finalists for UNO Seed Award a couple of years back, and unfortunately we are not able to win the award, but we tried our best to go to the finalists out of 900 contestants in UN SDG. Moving on to the next slide, please. So what is the specialty and how we make the T-shirts? So the T-shirt which I am wearing is made of 100% recycled PET bottle, and while making every single T-shirt, we will be recycling 12 PET bottles to make a single T-shirt, and we have not added any color to the garment, because whenever we go for coloring, a lot of salt and a lot of chemicals is being used. Even though we live in a cluster, in the Tirupur cluster, where we have the zero liquid discharge, still there is a lot of unanswered questions for solid waste that is being generated. So the liquid waste is recycled with huge amount of energy and firewood in Tirupur, But whereas the solid waste is still been remain as a landfill, and there is no solution as on date for the solid waste generated in the dyeing industry. So to avoid that, we make sure that the garment is not dyed, and we sell it only in the one color, which is a half-white color, which is the natural color of the polyester yarn. And in every t-shirt that we are making, when compared to a cotton t-shirt, we will be saving around 2,600 liters of water. So this data is being derived through an life cycle assessment, which we done already. And to everyone's surprise, for making 1 kg, for cultivating 1 kg of cotton, we require 10,000 liters of water. So 10,000 liters of water is what is used for cultivating 1 kg of cotton, and when it is being converted into a garment, it consumes 2,600 liters of water. That is how the calculation is being derived. And no fertilizers or no pesticides is used, since it is a polyester, and the CO2 emission is 70% lesser, since we are converting it from PET bottle to the yarn, and the garment is being made. So we are not extruding oil or anything, and we are converting one waste into an value addition, upcycle it and make it as a garment. So by that way, we are saving 70% of CO2, and 250 grams of landfill is being saved by recycling the garment and again. So we will be saving 250 grams of landfill. This is what is an environmental impact that we are creating in every single garment that we are making and selling it in the market. So moving on to the next slide.
Mr. Khatri, you have about
and apart from all these sustainable things, we are not compromising anything on performance. So it is highly anti-odor and antimicrobial finish. So it is very comfortable to wear even on the summer time where we used to sweat a lot. And the moisture wicking will be very good. So the sweat will not retain in the body, and it will be emitted outside, and highly fast drying, and you don't need to iron the garment for whole of your lifetime. So every time you're using the garment, you will be saving the ironing cost and also the energy that is consumed for ironing. So by that way, you will be saving 3 kgs of CO2 emission in every garment in its lifetime. So this is a saving that we are making. And moving on to the next slide. And we are packing it with cotton tag, which is made of cotton textile waste, and we have embedded organic seeds inside the tag, which when thrown, it will be, you just throw the tag in the soil and water it and leave it in sunlight, you will have a beautiful organic plant. We have embedded brinjal seeds in the tag. So, and we don't use any poly bags, and it has been carried only through a cotton bag as shown in the picture, which you can reuse it again and again for multi-purpose, and make sure that you are not wasting any or sending anything to the landfill. Next slides. Next slide. This has already been discussed. So we are making both the t-shirts of round neck, the polo collar shirts, and also reusable napkins. So this reusable napkins also is being used mainly for, we just want to make sure that it is an alternative for one-use tissue paper. We just want to make sure that we stop using one-use tissue paper and go for handkerchief, which is our traditional practice. And we want to make sure it has been coming back to with an contemporary way, and with add more value additions and featured garment. So moving on to the next slide. So in every t-shirts also, I mean every napkins also, we have calculated the CO2 emission and the water savings, so which has already been given. So it is not only the hanky that we are using. Even when we are using any cotton hanky, this is what the savings that we will make by avoiding the tissue paper. So we strongly insist not to go for tissue paper or paper napkins, and go for reusable napkins. Next slide. So speaking of the awards, we are one of the 10 finalists out of 900 contestants in UNO Seed Award. And we are on the negotiation for making an MOU with Indian Railways for circular economy, where we are getting the PET bottles from the platforms. We already been speaking with Western Railways in one platform, and we are recycling it and supplying them back with bed linens and pillow covers instead of the PET bottles. So this is something which we are already working with, and we are already listed in GEM platform. which is government e-market, and we are already been working with European countries, and we are planning to launch it in Scandinavian country within this year end. So this is my presentation, and thank you so much for opportunity. And I'd like to play a video before we end the session, where you have seen this video of what are all the causes that we are making for garment, and I would like to say about how we make the t-shirts. So can you please play the video, the last video?
Thank you, Mr. Kathir. Yes, so if you don't mind, we'll play the video after our next speaker, as he has to jump off at 5 for another meeting.
No problem. Sure.
We'll
Thank
play it before this ends. But thank you so much for such a very interesting and inspiring rendition of your work, and your solutions for minimizing the environmental impact of producing t-shirts is very, very impressive. And yeah, like I said, we'll play the video at the end.
Yeah, thank you.
Up next, we have Mr. Ashok Thanikonda, Manager for the Energy Program of WRI India, to talk about the clean production aspect of RECP by focusing on renewable energy for MSMEs. Thank you, Ashok, for joining us today. On to you for the presentation.
Hi. There's some background noise. I think some other colleagues have problem with them. Yeah, I think this is much better. Thank you, Tejashwini. Can you just confirm if I'm audible?
Audible, Ashok.
Yes, Ashok, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. Great. Since we're at the end of the session, I'll just quickly run through the slides. So I was asked to talk about, why should MSMEs consider renewable energy, and what are the problems or barriers they encounter, and also probably a little bit on solutions on how to overcome those barriers, right? Okay, let's see. So I think if you were to ask me this question like about 3-4 years back, why should MSMEs consider renewable energy? I mean, of course, we talk about sustainability, environment will be helpful, localized emissions are, fewer, etc., etc. But we would also used to talk about, how in the long term renewable energy was really cost effective, and the payback used to happen in probably 7 years or something like that. But right now, I think the really direct reason, and which doesn't need a lot of explanation, is that it is cheap. It is simply cheaper right now for companies to use renewable electricity, because over the years, economies of scale and technology improvements and market maturity has brought the cost down. Of course, not to mention the supporting government policies. On your screen, you can see how the benchmark, I mean, you could say these are the average wind and solar power costs compared with the LT commercial, LT industrial, HT commercial, and HT industrial tariffs in some key states of India. And it's there for everyone to see. It is simply cheaper to use renewable energy. Then for MSMEs, right, particularly when we zoom into MSMEs, why specifically MSMEs should be thinking about it? Of course, it is cheaper, but more importantly, it is, especially if we are talking about solar PV, and there's a reason why I'm only talking about solar PV, because there are other forms of renewable energy. There are windmills, small hydro, etc., etc. But as you can imagine, these are all highly locational specific. The small wind turbine market isn't very mature yet. So if you want to generate electricity on your factory premises, on your business premises, pretty much solar PV is your only option as of things stand today. And it is a modular technology. So, I mean, if you have space, you can generate any amount of electricity. It just you add more panels, right? And again, it is on-site. It is relatively easy to maintain, and it is also more predictable and easier to store, because I mean, by and large, you know that there's going to be X hours of sunshine in a day. And even if you have to plan for a battery backup, you know that the generation is going to happen at certain parts of the pretty much throughout the year. We're accounting for some seasonal changes. But for wind, which one, it cannot be on site, especially we don't have a matured mini wind turbine market yet. But two, also it could be highly seasonal. Again, that post monsoon time is when you have about 60% of wind power generation happens in 2 to 3 months. So planning for battery capacities could be slightly tricky. So all of these things make solar PV ideal for micro, small, and medium enterprises, especially so for the micro and smaller ones, because some of the medium scale ones are also slightly large actually, and they can afford other options. Having said this, why aren't already MSMEs? I told you guys it is cheaper, it's easier to use, everything. Having said this, why aren't MSMEs already using solar PV? We do talk in the market when we go and talk to MSMEs, we do realize that they have low awareness, not so much in terms of prices. I think prices of late people are more or less well versed, but what kind of panels to use, which vendor to go with, which brand to go with, these are all still some of the challenges. Like if you're buying a mobile phone, you could pretty much go onto Flipkart or Amazon, and you have all these thousands of options listed, lots of reviews. It's fairly easy for you to pick up. Unfortunately, that kind of market maturity didn't come up yet for solar PV, but it's going to get there. Some most of the MSMEs again could be operating out of leased premises, so they always have this concern with, what if I install rooftop solar PV here, and 3 years down the line my lease expires for this land, I have to move out of this premises, or sometimes I don't know whether my business will be running. For example, I mean, the most pertinent example is right now during Corona, nobody expected that businesses will be impacted for such a long time. So what to do with this kind of variability. If I make an investment, is it going to last long, or is it going to be a dead weight? Will it be a sunken cost, etc.? These are some problems. And even though central and state governments have pushed for net metering and gross metering programs and subsidy schemes, we find, I think, increasingly net metering is being removed for industrial consumers, and gross metering tariffs. Gross metering is where government says, okay, if you put up a rooftop solar plant and inject electricity into the grid, I'll pay you X rupees per unit. But that tariff isn't attractive yet, especially for MSMEs. They would much rather be interested in generating power and using it themselves. And the subsidy schemes also have had limited success in the Indian market, because again the amount of subsidy that comes either from state or center is limited, and usually they're offered on first come first served basis, and even that the vendors have to avail that subsidy after giving the product to the consumer. So it's a long run process. It didn't really prove to be effective. So there are no tailor-made products for MSMEs that way. And we all understand that MSMEs, they don't have highly reliable cash flows. Their business can be variable. So even if you're asked to, why not, you don't invest in the rooftop solar plant, a vendor will come and install it on your premises, and you can pay them per unit of electricity, pretty much like you will pay to your local discom. The challenge is the vendor themselves will not be comfortable, because they'll say, I don't know if this MSME is going to be in business 2 years down the line, and the payback period is, even if I consider 5 years, how am I sure that this contract is going to be honored? So that kind of credit worthiness of the MSMEs is a bit of a constraint. And again, often because of their size and their financial capabilities, some of the MSMEs cannot directly invest into their own rooftop solar plant. So these are some of the barriers that they have. Right. So having said, that these are the barriers, then what is it that we are trying to do? What could be happening, to cross these barriers? In the previous MSME series, some of you would have noticed that my colleague, Ms. Kajol, had talked about how they've been going around industrial parks trying to aggregate demand, essentially telling that, a bunch of MSMEs, if there are small factories, 4 or 5 factories, we tell them that instead of all 4 of you going and buying solar power from different vendors, why not you just come together and buy from a single vendor? So that way you can bargain for better prices, the cost will come down, and you can also afford to, hire the services of a consultant who can help you with the techno-commercial evaluation of the product. That was something we were doing, and this is, I mean, why we have gone the demand aggregation route is, I've just told you, explained with the genesis of that kind of work, that the MSMEs have these limitations. They cannot invest on their own a great deal. They cannot access these rooftop solar PPAs because of credit worthiness. So their strength can come in terms of numbers, especially when they can aggregate their demand. And on your screen, you see that there are, 3 models of demand aggregation that we propose, through which MSMEs can access renewable energy, cheaper, affordable renewable energy. One is through geographical aggregation on your right side, which is where we encourage MSMEs in a cluster or a special economic zone to do what we have done in Aurangabad and Naroda, like Rajul would have explained in last session. But if you are part of a supply chain to a large textile company, to a large fashion company, like my previous colleague was talking about, and you could oftentimes the fashion brands, global brands have sustainability commitments, which they try to work with you in, making your electricity supply also green. So there you could also try to tap into the financial expertise of this fashion brand or into their CSR money to see if they can help with some of these rooftop solar projects. These needn't be directly, subsidies that these corporates will give to you, but there could be technical assistance grants where they hire the consultants to help all the bunch of companies to buy rooftop solar. It could also be risk guarantee mechanisms where they'll say, okay, if you bunch of companies want to buy electricity on per unit basis from a vendor, I will guarantee this transaction by putting in X amount of money into a revolving fund. And the other kind of aggregation that is possible is sectoral aggregation, where you all could be, electrochemical plating units. I've just taken that example opportunistically also because, this electroplating industries, they actually need the direct current as opposed to the alternate current that we all have supply hooked up to. So there, because solar PV panels generate direct current. Right now, what we typically do is, we also invest in an inverter which will convert that into alternate current and then you use it. So there are costs for the inverter. There are also losses in terms of conversion to AC power. But in electroplating, if you're using direct current, you can avoid the cost of the inverter and also the conversion losses. So it works for that kind of industry, right? So electroplating units as a whole, if there are a bunch of them situated in a cluster, they could be looking at something very tailor-made for them. Like that, different industries which have specific requirements, they could the MSMEs in the industry could come together and work with state, central government agencies for better policies or financial products. I think that's more or less it. I've actually explained how technical MSME assistance to MSMEs can help in geographical aggregation. In the screen, you can see the solar potential of various industrial parks in India. And right, the same thing. And this is the the revolving fund mechanism that I was talking about, that a brand can guarantee a transaction of the MSMEs. And also electroplating clusters, how, or you could be talking food processing units where instead of electricity, you actually probably will be better off with solar dryers. That's also another example. So yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you, Ashok, for that great overview of how demand aggregation can be used to deploy renewable energy solutions for MSMEs. Now, I think maybe we can go back and play the video. I think we're nearly, our time's nearly up, but for those who can stay on for a couple of minutes longer, we can play the video that Mr. Khatir had talked about. And then we have another question for him, so we can take that. And that's about it for today. So, Tejaswini, if you could play that video, please. Wow, that was a great video. Thanks, Mr. Khatir, for that. And again, very impressive and inspiring what you're doing. I think we have a question for you from the audience, Varun, if you could
Sure, please.
take that.
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Khatir, we have a question. So, question for you, 3 questions combined into one. So,
Sure.
yeah, thank you for your presentation. So first is, what is the recyclability of your product? Yeah. Second, have you analyzed the microplastic in your wastewater? And third, so you have said that you have 80% female staff in your company. Do you also have equal pay? These three questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the questions. And to start with, first you have asked about microfiber release in the ocean. So here the
recyclability of your product, yeah.
Okay, recyclability of the product. Okay, so here what we are trying to do is here the garment that we are making is made of 100% polyester and it is made of cylindrical continuous length of yarn. So normally recycling is done through two process. One is chemical recycling and other one is mechanical recycling. So unfortunately for the fashion industry, the mechanical recycling is much preferred because of the cost effectiveness, and also it is being made into spun yarn, which has very small staple length, which will be blended with cotton, and that garment made of cotton blend and recycled polyester, it emits lot of microfiber release in the ocean. So it will be like 30 to 40% of the of the garment weight will be dissolved in the water during the course of its lifespan. So in order to avoid that, what we have done is in our EcoHike t-shirt, it is completely made of cylindrical continuous length of yarn, where we endorse the chemical process method, where the molecules are depolymerized and then it is being bonded back to the same formation of yarn and it is being made. So every time when we are recycling, the yarn quality remains the same and there is no loosens in the yarn. Since it is a continuous fiber, the amount of microfiber release in the ocean is 1/10 of what happens in the normal spun yarn. So this answers the question of microfiber release, and this is how the recycling is being done. So, and since we are not dyeing the garment, it can be recycled again, and even the trims that we have used, say for example the buttons and the prints that we have used, these can be recycled again. So it is made of sublimation and it will also be recycled and it will not be dissolved in the water. So this is how we are recycling. And third question, you are speaking about the women empowerment. So here in Tirupur, not just in our factory, in the whole of Tirupur, the minimum wages is being followed, and also the skill level is based on, I mean, the wages is based only on the skill level and gender has nothing to do with it. Because in the tailoring industry, the manpower is mainly it's operated by machines, where they sit and operate the machines, and the man and woman have plays the equal role. So only they based on their skill level and based on their efficiency, the salary is being derived, and not based on the gender or the age or the other criteria. Hope I answered the questions.
Yeah, thank you. Have the sort of question in the middle was, have you analyzed also the microplastic content in your wastewater?
So that is what we said. In our industry, we don't have the waste. This is a white category industry where we make the garmenting, and the yarn which we are making also is being recycled. I mean, during the wet processing also it is being recycled. 100% of the in the whole of Tirupur, ZLD is followed, where not even a single drop of water has been let down to the soil. So it is being recycled. So since we do not use any solid waste, I mean any dyes or any sludge in it, we do not create any solid waste. So there is no question of microfiber release or no question of polluting the water bodies or the wasteland.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you so much.
Back to you, Shubhangi.
Would you like to launch the 2 last polls?
I think we can close, yeah, because we have closing also to do. Yeah?
Great. Okay, so I'd like to invite Atik to close the session for today.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the participants, speakers, Mr. Bharat Jain sir, then Kathir and Sampath, and other members who have done the presentation today. And also thank you to the WRI team for managing the program. This program was supported by funders MacArthur Foundation, so thank you to them for supporting this initiative. I'm sure over the training series, many of the participants who have attended our past training series also, we are trying to bring different perspective on how we can manage and reduce our GHG emissions. And we thought that resource efficiency and cleaner production is one of the areas where we have a lot of untapped potential in terms of how we can reduce our emissions. And as highlighted by Bharat Jain sir, Kathir, and other members on how renewable energy or resource efficiency, cleaner production, and also even how you can reduce the impact of your product by bringing in new products, new innovations in your manufacturing process, as highlighted by Kathir, on how this T-shirt which we are EcoHeight product line which we are talking about, how it can help save water, not only at the production part, but even across the value chain, where he highlighted the cotton. Though whenever we buy T-shirt, we emphasize we should have cotton T-shirt or cotton shirts like that, 100% pure cotton. But we never thought from the environmental point of view on how much impact it is overall creating. That was one aspect on water, but definitely application of fertilizers, energy consumption to pump the water in the fields, all those things will result into GHG emissions. And definitely if we go for recycling or resource efficiency cleaner production, we will see that the benefits which we will be getting will be much more. And also in a way, something new can be come out, like for example, new product lines, new process, new technology. Definitely for as MSME, I would say right now the focus primarily is on energy efficiency, but moving forward, if we start focusing on waste, lean manufacturing, we will see that we will get more benefits in terms of energy, water, reduction of environmental pollution, and ultimately becoming more competitive. So this was on RECP. Our next series of the workshop will focus on policy and financing initiatives on how you can get policy incentives, and also how you can finance new initiatives which will result in GHG reduction and environmental performance improvement. So I would, most of you, as you have registered, will be definitely getting the information. I would request you to kindly share with your group and also register for the program. Maybe in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will finalize the date and we'll update you on the same. And also, you can reach out to WRI or CII or any of the members who you have questions where we were not able to address your concerns or your queries. Maybe you can reach out to us, we'll be able to clarify. And also any support you require in terms of GHG accounting. WRI has many capabilities in terms of emission factors, tools, standards, etc. So you can reach out to them or CII for any support, and we will be glad to support you all on your initiatives there. Now, with this, I will end my presentation and end our session today. And you all will be getting the recording of the webinar. We will be sharing the PDF of presentations, and also whatever Q&A which we got, we will be trying to share the copy with you all, and so that all the questions which were not addressed, maybe we can try addressing it in the later stage. So with this, we will end the program, and I wish you all a good evening and great time ahead. Thank you.